Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Shauna from Created and Made, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how I like to use stencils in my gel printing. I'm going to be using some beautiful stencils from PM Artist Studios and showing you all the simple layers that you can make using just stencils and simple textural materials. Fun stuff ahead. Stay tuned. Let's start by taking a look at the stencils that I will be using today. I got these stencils from PM Artist Studio. They sent them to me free of charge to review and sort of, get familiar with the product line. Now, the package that they sent me comes with tons of little goodies that we'll take a look at as well. This was a foam stamp. Now, you don't get these standard. I think they just sent that to me special, but they do sell foam stamps on their website, which you saw up on the screen a few seconds ago. You do get these things though. They send you some cute little pieces of collage material and an additional freebie stencil, and they all come packaged in these cute glassine envelopes that I love because you can use those in crafts as well. Now, PM Artist Studio stands for Patricia and Mariah, and they are on YouTube 4 times a week going live. So make sure you check them out there as well. Now, I like these little inserts that come with the stencils. They give you a lot of information, the angel policy, a picture of the stencil, which is important to me because a lot of times I will lose the packaging, the original packaging of a stencil, and I have no idea what it's called anymore. So if you can keep these little inserts, you'll have all the information you need about your stencil collection, if you have a collection. If you don't, you should get one. This one's called Choppy Waters, and as you saw, it has a beautiful wave pattern. Aqueous Effervescence Broken is this one, and I really loved how this one looked as well. Look at that. That's really creative and really a beautiful stencil. You can see a lot of potential with that one. And the final one that they sent me was called Neurographic, and as you can see over there, it gives information about the artist that designed the stencil, who was Estella Banks, which I like that as well. They give you information about the designer, if there is a separate artist designer, and in a place where you can contact them, their website, etc. So before I get started, let's go ahead and take a look at the supplies we'll be using. Obviously, the stencils, they're the star of the show. I'm also going to be using some texture materials, which is a bunch of mesh ribbons and whatnot. And I'll link to those in the description if you're interested in those. Brayers, of course, many different kinds of brayers. You don't have to have many. I have many. Obviously gel plates. I'm using 2 8x10s. Some 65-pound cardstock is what I'll be using for these prints, and various acrylic paints. This is Lucas Krill, but I use all kinds of brands, and so can you. The brand really doesn't matter. So let's go ahead and get started. This is the way I like to use stencils, right? I already started using this stencil. That's why it has that sort of green cast to it. And the way that I like to use stencils is, I don't know, it's not straightforward necessarily. See, that is a great representation of what the stencil looks like, but that's not how I like to use stencils when I'm gel printing. I don't like just a full-on 100% reproduction of the stencil most of the time, because I don't know, I kind of like more grungy and sort of broken, incomplete iterations of the stencil. And so in order to make that happen, while the paint is still wet, I kind of try to lift some of it off to sort of break it up a little bit. And sometimes I've waited too long and it doesn't lift up as much as I want to. And a trick to sort of get it to lift a little bit is to add a little bit of paint to the print, and then go ahead and pull it like you would a normal print. But all you're going to get is it's going to lift off where the wet paint is, right? So you're not going to lift the whole thing off. As you can see there, I was able to sort of break up the design a bit, and that is the way I like to use stencils in my prints. I really like to break them up and sort of get a grungier effect. Now what I'm doing now is I'm going in with my second color. I'm using 3 different colors for these prints. I'm going in with my second color, and I'm going to add a second layer on top of the stenciled layer of just a textured pattern. Now I am using some mesh ribbon that is a mesh table runner and a produce bag and things like that. I have a set of mesh materials that I have on my website. And if you're interested in, I have a kit that I put together of all the many mesh things that I use for stencil for texturing in my gel prints. And so as you can see here, I have a baby wipe in my hand. I have that open produce bag there, and I am just removing the paint through that bag, and that leaves that texture behind. So that is my second layer. I start with the stencil layer. I add texture over the top, and then here's an additional textured layer, and I am just using that is a child's toy. I forget what they're called, but one of those little blocks, and I am removing paint using that. You can use whatever texture that you have. You can use Legos, you can use whatever to remove additional paint. And now I'm going in with my final layer, which is my pull layer, and I like to use, again, this adds additional detail and interest to me. I like to use more than one color, and I will model them up, and so it ends up, I use a white, and so sometimes the white will blend with the color I'm using to make a lighter color. Sometimes it won't blend and it'll just be blobby. I like that too. I believe that it adds additional interest to the prints. And so although this isn't like 5, 6, 7, 8 layers, but you can see just using a simple set of layers and texture can give you a really interesting, beautiful print that still, the stencil is still the star of the show, right? The stencil is still the main print that you see because it's the first thing we put down. It is my darkest color, and it is what the eye is drawn to, but you also add some interest in the background with that texture and whatever other pieces of textural material you want to add. Okay, so this is the second stencil. This is Choppy Waters, and as you can see, I used it before I started recording. I used it a bunch because I really like this one. Now, a way that you can add super simple layers with gel printing is to sort of layer the stencil on top of itself, and this is a really great stencil to show that technique. Now the first layer was just me using my lightest color that I brayered through the stencil, and then I flipped it over and got the negative of the stencil on my second plate. Now I'm going to take sort of a middle color. I'm going light, medium, dark, and this is my medium color. I have shifted the stencil over slightly so that when I print on top of what I already printed, it'll be just a slight, just like a shadowed effect, right? And I am using the paper underneath my plate to sort of act as a like a guide as to where I should put my paper to make sure that I am lining my prints up. Now I'm going in with the third and final layer. This is going to be my darkest color, and that's some mauve color by Lucas Krill. And I am brayering through that stencil, and I'm going to just have this be the final layer in this particular set of prints. Now this is a really beautiful way to use a stencil like this, to have a lot of wavy patterns, and the stencil remains the star of the show, although you can add the interest by layering up the prints. And I think both sides of the print, the left and the right, show really different aspects of the process and of the stencil. Now I really like how these came out with the darkest color on top, or you can actually flip it and have the darkest color on the bottom, and that'll give you a different effect as well. I have plenty of paint left on the plate, so I'm going to end up pulling this off too, and you'll see how I was able to get in 2 more additional prints that are also interesting in their own right. Now these stencils are made from 74-pound Yupo, and that is different from the typical stencil you're going to find. And most stencils use like mylar, some sort of plastic. I mean, Yupo is a synthetic material, but you know Yupo. Yupo is usually used in you see that ended up being a lot of paint left on the plate. Yupo is usually used in alcohol inking, and it is sturdy. It is it'll hold up to a lot of paint and abuse and what have you. And it's also fairly easy to clean off when you're ready to do that. And so those are the prints that I used with that Choppy Water stencil. Now my final stencil that I got It's called Neurographic, and this one was a bit different in that it has a mask to go with it, and so I was able to do two different types of prints using this particular design. Now, what I'm showing you here is that you can add layers with materials that, with not just acrylic paint, but other mediums, other whatever you can use through a stencil, you can use it to make a layer. Now, I am using this Kleenex. I have a whole video where I did this Kleenex thing and was able to take many layers of prints using alcohol ink and Kleenex. This is a sort of a different iteration of that wasn't as successful as I was hoping it would be. It didn't work out quite how I thought it would, but still, I'm trying to get the texture from the Kleenex and the color from the alcohol ink to imprint through the holes of the stencil. Now, there are probably different or better ways to do this, but this is the way that I came up with. And it worked out okay, as you will see. I'm using the second plate to sort of remove some of that extra ink and also, get some second print out of it as well. Now, in the video where I used Kleenex, I took multiple prints off of that Kleenex onto paper, and that works really well. The way that I did this, it ended up working, but I had to fill in some of the spaces of the stencil with additional ink because it just didn't transfer well enough, and that's fine. Whatever, it worked out. So I dried that off with my cool fan, and that cool fan thing is really good for gel printing because, like I said, it's cool, but it has up to 5 levels, so it will definitely dry things off for you. I put white over the top of the alcohol ink, as you just saw. Now, this is going to add some opacity in the background of the alcohol ink because the alcohol ink is translucent. And so to be able to see all that beautiful color that we just added, I added a white behind it. Now, this print that I'm doing over there on the side, that one didn't end up working out so well because I pulled it with a color that was too light. And so the Neurographic stencil design didn't end up being as visible as I would have liked it to be. And so, but this other design that I'm doing, after I put the white on the back of it and let that dry, I'm going back over the top with some really opaque black. Now, this is going to obviously the white isn't going to be affected. I'm just going to see the black through the place where the stencil was, like, as you can see. So it kind of ends up looking like sort of a stained glass effect, which wasn't necessarily what I was going for, but I ended up really liking it. I mean, it is a beautiful way to use layers of other mediums and different colors of acrylic paint to create an interesting print. Now, I used the Kleenex to create texture in that last print, and I'm just going to use a different item to create texture in this print. So you can kind of see a pattern here. In simple layering, I used stencils and a simple textural item over the top. It combined with the colors, different colors of acrylic to create my layers. Now, I have a piece of tissue paper there that I balled up, and it's simple tissue paper texture. I put through the stencil on top of some opaque golden black ink. Now, that plate over on the side, it doesn't have the stencil. Obviously, I just did an extra little print for fun. Now, I am using multiple colors of acrylic here. And I broke out my small brayer to make sure that I am just rolling the different colors through the holes in the stencil. I don't want the colors to blend too much. I want there to be two distinct colors, and that's part of the what will add texture to the print. And again, I'm going over it with an opaque white. I actually didn't end up needing to do this step, because unlike the other one, I'm going to pull the whole thing with white. So I could have just pulled over the top of the whole thing with white, but whatever. It's an extra step that didn't hurt and didn't harm. So I'm going to go over the whole thing with white, and I'm going to pull it off. And what I'm going to be able to see is that black tissue paper texture on top, along with the colors from the acrylic that I braided through the holes of the stencil. And as you can see, it's a totally different look than what we had before, but it's still the same premise: stencil, texture, multiple colors of acrylic to get some visual interest in your prints. And those are the other additional prints that I pulled with the other plate. Those are good looking as well. So here is the recap. Now, you didn't see me create all of these prints because I had a nice long play with these stencils and I really enjoyed using them. The Yupo is very sturdy. It takes some getting used to because it is opaque, whereas a lot of stencil material has some translucency to it. So I think that was the not really a learning curve, but that was the difference for me. And it's not a detractor or anything. It just will take some getting used to. And it's worth getting used to because if you head on over to PMArtiststudio.com, they have literally hundreds of stencil designs over there to choose from. They're beautiful, they're diverse, they're unique, and if you have a stencil addiction, I'm sorry, it's just going to get worse if you head over there. They also have hundreds of foam stamp designs as well. They have digital downloads. They have tons of creative, artsy tools for your viewing and purchasing pleasure. So, PMArtiststudio.com. Now, as I flip through these prints, I hope that my idea about the simple layers was able to come through clearly. If you use a stencil and just a few simple textural items over the top, you can get yourself some very lovely layers and prints on your gel plate. Now, here is the information for PM Artist Studio's YouTube channel. Like I said, they are live 4 times a week: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And you can head on over to their website at pmartiststudio.com to check out any of these designs that you saw here today, along with hundreds of others. I hope you guys liked this video, and if you did, go ahead and leave it a like, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I hope to see you guys next time, and in the meantime, keep creating and making. Bye bye.